Okay, how many are going to be involved in some traveling uh, during the Christmas holidays? Okay, I will too.
Local.
I will too. Uh, my, what about a fever? Have you had a fever, maybe, or a fever coming on recently, or whatever, maybe, or you might be on the watch for it? Headache, fatigue, dry cough, sore throat, stuffy nose, nausea. If you've got any of those symptoms, you've been bitten by a bug. And as we know it, it's called the flu bug. So that is something that during the Christmas holidays is really prevalent. You know, we had a pandemic as COVID-19, but the flu is a pandemic every year because it's continuing to replace itself with another version of the flu. So that's what we have coming up. You may consider you're cooped up in a car and someone's sick in the car. More than likely, if you've got the flu, everybody else in the car before Christmas holiday's over, they'll have the flu. The CDC recommends everyone older than 6 months old get the flu shot, or the vaccine. I'll refer to it as the vaccine. The National Safety Council trust their voice of a pandemic, also encourages everyone to take the COVID vaccine as well. Now, I went to get my flu shot at one of the pharmacies at one of the grocery stores. I believe it was the Kroger pharmacy. I went and got my flu shot, but they didn't want to give me the flu shot unless I took the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, I was planning on taking it anyway. I just wasn't planning on taking it the same day. And for the reason why is I took the COVID vaccine about 2 years ago or 3, and I had a reaction to the shot. My heart went into a fibrillation, and I was walking down the hall, and I kind of almost passed out. And told my wife, I said, I'm really dizzy. And she said, what do you think? And I said, I don't know. So she got her blood pressure machine out, and it records your blood pressure as well as your heart rate. And my blood pressure was like 45 over 27, and my heart rate was 185 beats. So she took me to the emergency room, and I felt really bad, and they put me on a bunch of blood thinners and stuff, and I felt worse with the blood thinners than I did without it. And so I told the doctor about that, and they said, well, if you don't feel like you need it, don't take it. So I haven't taken it anymore, but that medication was like $3,500 a month, you know, for just the medications. So, and I felt terrible whenever I was taking it. Here's a couple of pointers. Whenever I was at the emergency room recently, not for myself in that time, but when I was at the emergency room, I asked them, I said, how many people do you have during the holidays that shows up here at the emergency room? They said, usually we got a full house. And I said, well, what causes that? And they said, people falling off ladders, decorating their, the house or whatever. Now, I recommend to everyone, when I get a chance to speak on that, is there's artificial trees, there's trees that stay all together, you don't have to take them apart and store them away, and they're pre-lit. And I recommend pre-lit trees because you don't have to climb a ladder. And whenever my children were small, we used to have a live tree. And that one particular year, the live tree fell over like 3 times in my living room. And so, I tell people, like small children, if you have small children that maybe show up at your house, they eat the light bulbs. One of my sons ate, my oldest son ate a light bulb whenever he was like 3 or 4, It scared us to death, but we took him to the emergency room, and of course, he's well and now, and it never affected him. But also, I have a friend that had a big log cabin out close to the Smoky Mountains. Had a big Christmas tree, big one of those poplar Christmas tree, blue spruce or whatever it might have been, and he had the tree close to his fireplace. Those trees get dry if you don't keep them watered, and that tree caught on fire, and they had to drag it out of the house, and it on fire. And I had another friend that, I don't know where his brain happened to go, but he felt like he wanted to get rid of the tree. He had a big fireplace, and so he was feeding the tree into the fireplace like a chipper, you know, and the tree got away from him, you know. So people just don't think very well, but if you, I got on a ladder. I had an old ladder out back, and it was a wooden ladder. It had seen its better days, and it had been out in the weather, and I got on one of the steps, and you really need somebody watching for you whenever you're on a ladder, especially if it's a ladder that's not in good condition. Slip, trips, and falls, that's one of the big things around the Christmas holidays, because a lot of people are not used to standing on a ladder, or maybe not physically in shape to stand on a ladder. So just don't end up in the emergency room. Don't leave in your car going on a long trip, and I call a long trip at least 300 miles and more. Get your car serviced. Right now is a good time to get the car in the shop and get all the fluids replaced, replenished, and make sure that your windshield wiper fluid is, and we don't know yet, but we've been pretty lucky with our weather in the last 2 or 3 weeks. You know, the weather's been beautiful, but right around the corner, some of that stuff that falls out of the sky called snow is probably on its way, and we're probably, in fact, we're overdue probably for an ice storm or something of that effect. So if you leave and go on a long trip, remember to have an emergency kit. Have several bottles of water, a couple of blankets with you in the emergency kit, and to stay warm, because you never know when your car might break down and you got to leave some people in the car. Take some like an extra fuel can. You don't even have to have fuel in it, but just don't, run out of gas. My older son, he's real bad about, I want to see how far I can get in the car without putting gas in it. So, that, what is it? Murphy's Law, what can happen, will happen. And so I count sometimes the traveling on the Christmas holidays is one of those conditions.
The title is The Comparison Trap. One of the things that I talk about in my book, my latest business book, The Individual Team, How Fairness Works the Workplace, is I talk about the fact that people do not like to be treated like one another, because we're all individuals. That's the whole point of the book. And many times we get into this rut of us comparing ourselves to others, or others comparing us to even others, a third party. So there's two different aspects there. I'm going to talk first of all about the aspect of how we put ourselves in that rut, the comparison trap. And it's kind of natural to want to be better than what we are, but we kind of have to take a really good inventory of our own skills and understand how good can we become. So if I want to become a better runner, I could probably do that. I know I can do that. But am I going to run in the next Olympics? Probably not. We've got to be better. We have to be more realistic than that. So why would I compare myself to what the Olympiads would do? Recently, I got the idea that for me to start working out, I need to go back and find out what were the requirements of my 20-year-old self in the physical training test. So we would do a PT test once, if not twice a year in the Army. And how many push-ups, sit-ups, and pull-ups could I do at that point, and how far could I run? They've got a completely different test nowadays than what they did back then. But I kind of dread even looking at that to see if I could do something nowadays that my 20-year-old self could have done. So the point is not that we can be as good as someone else. The point is that we can be our best. Excellence. And that's one of the things, again, that I talk about in my book is excellence. So instead of talking about equity or equality, excellence. But there is a tendency that we fall into that trap of comparing ourselves to others, and it's not healthy. We need to break ourselves of that. Can I simply just look at, can I be my best? Now, the other aspect of that is that sometimes people want to compare us to others. And we've got to be able to push back on that a little bit. In my book, I was talking about some of this comparison, and it can be really very hurtful, even years later. Just a few paragraphs in here. Most of us would agree any adult who would express more love to one child over another is simply a bad parent. In fact, it's not about love at all, as true love is without condition or strings attached. So why might a parent create such a dichotomy in the first place? In many situations I have observed, it appears to be due to the favored sibling making life seemingly easier for the parent. So it's really a bit of self-service there. In a lesser situation, most of us have experienced the shunning effect from a teacher in our primary education. It could have been a personality conflict or honest miscommunication. In either regard, it left us asking, why me? What did I ever do to you? More than likely, we will never have an answer to that question, yet we feel the sting of inequity. Essentially, it goes to self-interest on part of the adult. As stated, it makes for bad parenting, but partiality also goes for making bad management. A team may not be a supervision's children, though they do seek consideration, appreciation, and support just like children. Furthermore, all employees deserve consideration, appreciation, and support. So, if you have someone in management who insists on treating you like someone else, or they make comparisons, you did a good job there, Danny, but you know what? Bob could have done it so much faster, so much neater, so much more efficient. And you have to ask yourself, well, is there something there that I can learn? Or are we talking about different skill sets? And if it's different skill sets, then you may just have to push back a little bit and say, well, that's what Bob does. Bob's really good at that. Let me tell you what I'm good at. And sort of politely insisting that others don't compare us to a third party. So, be mindful of the comparison trap. Don't do it to yourself. Don't let it happen to you.
Fellow Toastmasters and guests, Table Topics gives us all a chance to do some extemporaneous, what's the proper word? Extemporaneous speaking. You will often get called upon unexpectedly in many situations, and you need to be able to effectively get up and handle yourself and respond in a coherent and confident way. Who will be our first volunteer, Mr. Danny, tonight?
I can do that.
All right, here you go. Just grab it.
Okay.
Here, I'll read it to you
All right.
if you want. Which vices would you most like to indulge in?
Vices.
Vices.
Oh, my goodness.
Do you have a vice?
I don't know.
Like eating a gallon of ice cream every day or something?
Oh, okay.
What is your...
Well, that is a good one.
Oh, that's my favorite one.
Oh, I guess food would be one of them. I do like to eat. I do like good food. So I think that would be something. And when the holidays come in, I usually pick up about 4 or 5 extra pounds when the holidays start to fade away. So probably that would be my advice.
All right.
Benny? Who would be your second volunteer, Mr. John?
Oh,
Mr. John.
okay. Thank you, sir.
All right.
All right.
I have picked one out for you, Mr. John.
All right.
Since you're out and about a lot, what would you do if you saw a dog locked in a hot car in August and it's 102 degrees outside and there's nobody in sight?
Well, fellow Toastmasters, no guest. What I would do to save a dog's life, I would make sure I open up the car door and let some of the cooler air in. Now, being myself, I'm kindly afraid of dogs and have been ever since I was 6 years old when I got bit in the leg when I played with a dog by accident. Now, some dogs, you gotta understand, you don't wanna leave them in a hot car like that. There has also been times where they used to chase me when I was riding the bike down Mercury at the corner of Mercury and Bear going to Hobgood. And these 2 cars that didn't even care about themselves ran the poor dog over.
Oh,
And I stopped. They just deliberately just ran over that dog while he was chasing me. So to put that in perspective, you don't want to leave a dog out there in a hot car in 100 degrees, because that dog would have passed away. Or if the Humane Society would have caught that, whoever left them in the car would have been arrested.
John?
okay. I guess that's me next. Huh.
Who would be our next volunteer, Mr. Blaine?
I will do it.
I've got one for you here. If your friends have declared bankruptcy several times, would you tell another friend who planned on loaning them some money? This is one friend over here that's been bankrupt many times. Another common friend, more recent, that doesn't know. And they have asked him to borrow a few measly tens of thousands of dollars to start their new business. What would your obligation or thought process be?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters. I am inclined to say that I would probably say something to that other friend. I remember when I was in college, and there was a girl I was dating for probably about 9 months, a better part of a year. And apparently she started cheating on me. She was running around with some other boys. And some of my friends knew about it. They didn't say anything to me. That stung. I did not like that. So I do value people's privacy. But yeah, I would definitely be, I guess the term is a snitch. But I would definitely do that. I do have a snitching rule. It kind of goes, if I can recall exactly how it goes. I'm not going to impose myself or my beliefs on someone else unless they are determined to personally, like physically, or financially ruin others. In which case, I'm going to say something about it. So that's my creed, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine.
All right.
Pick me one out there,
All
Mr.
right.
Blaine.
Oh, Dane's gonna go again. Oh, okay, good.
All right. If you found out that the company you worked for was cheating the government, Would you blow the whistle? TVA.
Yeah.
If you found out that the company that you worked for was cheating the government, would you blow the whistle?
I guess that's where the inspector general comes in.
That is a good question for me. I would love to say yes, that I would do it 100% of the time. But the truth is, I would probably do it most of the time and not all of the time relative to who, when, and where. If it were outrageous, absolutely. If it's, you don't want to be, you're going to get woven into some of that if you're not careful. If there's something horrendous going on and you know about it at that point, you need to come forward, because there's a term, guilt by association and various things. I know a young boy that was driving a stolen car that he didn't drive, but he was 16, and he was a young, dumb, stupid kid. And here's this car, and it's a nice 75-degree April day, and he decides to get in that car on the joyride and gets pulled over and gets arrested for grand theft auto, wrong place, wrong time. There's so many things that can go wrong if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. If I were working for a company like that, I would definitely be soon to leave it. And I hope that I would do the right thing and turn them in, and you can do that in a discreet way if necessary, because you don't want to get shot in the back of the head. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, evaluation portion of our meeting is so that people can get feedback to go from good to great. I enjoyed your speech, holiday travel, the things you've got to be aware of. Holiday travel can be tedious, and it can also be dangerous to your health. Several things in here that I liked. Your clarity was really good, I thought. Your eye contact was very good, especially after that first 45 or 50 seconds, which you kind of got rolling. Your gestures were okay. You know, you held your hands like so a couple times, and this is fine. It's much better for that, for too much. And you did some normal gesturing, which was fine. You didn't overdo it. There's a sweet spot in there for everything, and you did a pretty good job of that. Audience awareness, and eye contact, I thought was good. Comfort level. I thought your comfort level is always good. The thing that has people get more experienced speaking, I think the thing that they need to be aware of is becoming too comfortable. I've caught maybe myself like that. You're very comfortable. Sometimes you might be better off if you actually weren't, to have a little bit of that anxiety or whatever, has its place. It's good for you. A couple things you could work on to go from good to really good. One would be to focus on vocal variety, which is what we all struggle with as Southerners. When I record myself and I try to go high and then low and all these things, when I go back and listen to it, I thought I went from here to here, and it's really not much. So you really have to be conscious of trying to get your vocal variety up or down. I thought that you did a good job of using some stories in there. You had the story about, the fire and then your heart rate and blood pressure, the tree, the wooden ladder. So it's always good to use a story. I think a great way to start a speech is either a question or a story, which you opened with a question. I think that's a great way to open a speech because people will listen. I think it would be very effective if you would tie those stories together, not really tie them together, but take a pause, just a 2-second pause, and then hit that story and tell the story about the tree or whatever. And when that story's over, give it a 2-second pause because it's telling the audience that story's over. I think that's a really good habit that I have been trying to incorporate, but it's something you got to be conscious of. The only other thing that, and you did a good job on your grammar, but to go from good to great, work on your bridge words. You had two so you knows, two so's, a you know, and two and does. And in an 8-minute speech, that's not bad. If you were to clean that up, add a little pause between your stories, you could go from good to really good, just with that little bit. And if you're totally at ease, be aware that you're totally at ease and try to maybe pick it up a minute, because I think you got to keep your pace over 120 words a minute. Because if you time yourself, for us, we're slow talkers.
Mm-hmm.
When we get to 120 words a minute or less, it's too slow. I don't know what the sweet spot is. That's what I've seen about myself from recording and listening and watching. 140, 150 is a little better pace, kind of like maybe what I'm saying now, instead of getting down and, so be aware, pick the pace up, keep the pace up a little bit, just be aware, not to get too slow.
Thank you very.
Mr. General Evaluator,
Right.
have you ever gone in and counted words and things?
I have not, but you've got me thinking about that, and
That AI
I'm about to
thing will
Google
do that,
that
I'm
to
sure.
find out what is a good, what the internet thinks is a good pace for the words per minute. Very good.
You know, one thing I left out, just sitting here thinking, is that, instead of an accident happening, you know what, one of the biggest things that brings people into the emergency room during the holidays?
Stupidity.
Oh yeah, well that's, but food poisoning.
Really? Food poisoning?
Because people, they get in a hurry and they leave the deviled eggs out, overnight, or whatever those things that pick up those things that gives you food poisoning.
My wife is always saying, don't leave that overnight, I'll get food poisoning. I've never had it like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, John, you are evaluating me, sir. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say about me.
Right.
I'll probably that. Tanya. Very good.
Thank you. Club president, general evaluator, man of many hats,
Toastmaster.
fellows Toastmasters, no guests. Your speech tonight blamed those who talk about the comparison trap. And believe me, you have done a lot of motivational speaking in your lifetime. So I put down some of them. I didn't take much notes because I put everything on film to put on the highlight reel coming up later.
Oh.
So we're going to start with your clarity. Your spoken language is clear and is easily understood. So you really got that spoken language to reach out to the audience. You use vocal variety, which stood for excels in using tone, speed, and volume as tools. So you had like your comparison team book, but on your eye contact, you need to look at more of the audience instead of just reading out the story in your book, because that drives away your audience instead of just pulling them in. So I got you excel at using tone, actually effectively use eye contact to engage the audience. But you got to remember, if you're going to take notes, you got to look at your script first. Sometimes I have a bad habit. I was supposed to give a speech a couple of weeks back, but because we didn't have the key to get in, I couldn't do it. So it's going to be coming up at the December 10th meeting. Your gestures, just like I'm using gestures now, you use his physical gestures effectively, like you use your hand movements and everything. You had audience awareness, which you engage the audience completely and anticipate audience needs. So that sounds very good. You had a good comfort level. You appear fully at ease with the audience. You had an interest. You engaged the audience with highly compelling, well-constructed content. So that book is a well-constructed content. Just always remember to just not to look down as much and just look up more to engage. Because I know when I first came to Toastmasters, I was afraid to look at the audience. But you got to learn in almost nearly 16 years. And you was well supported. You delivered the exemplary speech with a topic that is well supported by the content of the speech. So you don't have much that you can work on, because you know you speak to tens and thousands of people in your momentum group. So that's all the evaluation I have on my end. A JJV television production.